right, welcome to the Grow to Amazing podcast. This is Tony Mays, your host. I am very excited today to have a guy on the podcast that I've used as inspiration. He is part of a company called Echelon Front. His name is Jason Gardner, and he is a former U.S. Navy SEAL, Master Chief, and enlisted leader within the Navy SEAL group within the Navy. He is a combat leader, a leadership instructor with Echelon Front, and speaker. He spent nearly 3 decades in the SEAL teams with 9 deployments across the globe. He worked alongside some of the other figures that I've talked about in the podcast of Jocko Willink, Leif Babin, and several other members of the Echelon Front team. You have now retired from the Navy, and you've moved your family to far northern Montana, right? I believe.
Northeastern Washington.
Northeastern Washington. Okay, close. But how far from the Canadian border are you actually?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. So you're well into fall now. Then I take it. Yeah.
Or
not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah, it's like 88 degrees here. I actually really enjoy the fall, but fall's definitely coming because all the stink bugs, which are like these little beetles, are trying to get in the house right now. So they know something that we don't. Cold weather's coming.
Yep. So you must be east of the Coast Range, but then west of the Rockies, right? So
yeah, I'm right. I'm kind of in the northeastern corner of Washington, 2.5 hours north of Spokane, not that far away from Idaho.
Okay.
So we got very different weather and very different politics on this side of the state.
Yeah, I can bet. I can imagine. So Jason, tell me a little bit about, I've listened to a lot of the podcasts you've been guests on, so I'm not going to try to rehash all of that. You've been on Jocko's podcast multiple times. I just listened to the one you did with Jack Carr, and that was great. And you've had your wife Iris on there as well. And I think both of your stories are incredible stories to hear. But what got you, what got you going? You're originally from San Clemente, California, I believe, right? What got you interested in the Navy SEALs as a career originally?
So initially, I was going to join the Marine Corps because my dad was a Marine, and at 7 is when I just decided that I was going to go into the military. And initially, the plan, as I'd laid it out in my head as a 7-year-old, was that I was going to go in the military, and then after that, find some kind of job outside where it's like a forester or a biologist or something, working in nature. And then I wound up kind of just getting stuck in the military because I liked it. But there was a martial art that I was taking called Kaji Kempo, which is kind of a hybrid that doesn't steal, but takes the good things, leaves the bad, bunch of other martial arts. And one of my instructors was a SEAL in Vietnam. And so when my parents found this out, they were super impressed. And I had no idea what to make of it. I'm like, what is even a SEAL? Because, at the time, no one knew what SEALs were.
Sure.
And so
this was pre-Charlie Sheen, I'm assuming, or something like that. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. We're talking back in the 80s, right?
Yep.
And I mean early 80s, 83, 84 time frame. And so then as I started to look at what the SEALs did, and I played water polo, I was a lifeguard, and so the concept of being in a maritime special force was super appealing.
Sure.
Like, are you kidding me? I'd have to work around the water and do stuff like that.
You get paid to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, sign me up for that. So that was a shift. And then once I started to pull the string on that, I found out that, okay, by my junior year in high school, I decided this is what I want to do.
Sure.
And then that was my focus. And I enlisted in the Navy straight out of high school. Well, actually, I worked as a lifeguard for a summer. And then when everyone went back to school in September, I went in the Navy, but I did that delayed enlistment program.
Okay.
And I did boot camp, which really, I didn't have a guarantee of going to SEALs until I went to boot camp and screened. In boot camp, we do a screening. And there were some things that I did to let up to ensure that I would have the best chance to make it to our selection course. One was I chose a rate, which was gunner's mate, which was the source rating to go to the SEAL teams.
So there's only certain ratings that are or eligible to go to SEAL training. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Back
So
then, anyway.
If you're in a critical rating, the Navy's like, no, we're not letting you go. Like if
Gotcha.
I become an ET or one of the other ratings that the Navy had a critical need for, they're not going to let you leave and go to the SEAL teams.
Sure.
So I chose gunner's mate as a source rating, and then I was physically able to pass the test. Did that. Went to gunner's mate A school, which was 6 months long, and then after the A school, I got orders to go to SEAL training, and so I had been in the Navy about 8 months when I checked into basic underwater demolition school. And
now, if you hear Jocko talk about buds, he kind of doesn't poo-poo it. He doesn't dismiss it that it was tough. It's you're wet and sandy, basically. Do you feel kind of the same way about it or was there more of a mental game you had to play to get through it?
No, there was no mental game for me. I was either going to die there or I was going to graduate.
Sure.
And so that was the parameters I put myself in. And luckily my body did break, but not enough to where I was going to roll back. Like when I was right after the 14-mile timed run, which is the last timed evolution that you have in basic underwater demolition school. My legs were hurting me so bad. I went and saw the doctors at that point. And they x-rayed my shins and I had stress fractures in both of them. Sure. And so the doc is like, well, I'm going to roll you back. You have stress fractures. And I said to him, well, and roll it back means that you go back to the next class and start over in that third phase. I said, well, why would you do that to me? I just completed the 14-mile timed run.
Yeah. And
he goes, oh, yeah, okay, you're good to go. And he just put me on a walking stick for 2 weeks for the remainder of until we graduated, which was nice.
So where do you think that determination to finish, or die trying, that's just what you decided when you went in and you weren't going to give up?
I'm just stubborn. And I had told so many people that that's what I wanted to do. And that was my focus. I figured if I didn't make it, I could never go home.
Yep.
And so.
Was your dad a Vietnam vet as well?
No.
Okay.
My dad was a JAG officer in the Marine Corps and over the course of his service, he didn't go to Vietnam. Okay. So anyway, so that was it. And it wasn't so, I mean, I didn't think my parents would quit loving me. It was like more the people in my community. I was like, everybody knew that this is what I wanted to do. They'd see me running down the beach in jungle boots and at 5 a.m, trying to get ready for training. And there's always an aspect when you go to try something like that, there's folks waiting to see you fail. And I was not about to give them the satisfaction of seeing them fail. So it was just like, yep, I'm either going to die here. And it is so stinking hard. That's the attitude that you have to have in order to make it through. You listen to like the one podcast Jocko had Drago on there, he's a Polish fella, and he actually spent time in a gulag, and he's done stuff that was harder than Bud's. And for him, it wasn't as challenging because he'd already had that gnarly experience. So here's Jocko's thing. It's like, when you get into the teams, you will have all kinds of times when you're more tired, you're colder, you're hungrier, the suck factor is way higher than it was in Bud's. So most of us that have had a long career in the SEAL teams, we really don't want to talk about Bud's that much because it's not really like an apex experience for us.
Yep. And I don't want to obsess over it either. So absolutely. But
it's interesting conversation. People want to know what it takes to make it through the gate. And what it takes fundamentally is like, hey, I wasn't going to quit or I was going to die. And then the other aspect that it takes is having your eye on that goal, which is a long-term strategic goal. And then worrying about one step at a time.
Yeah.
And it literally gets down to that point in Hell Week where it's not a matter of, so it starts, well, hey, I'm just going to make it to the next meal.
Sure.
And then there are points where it's like, I'm just going to get my left foot in front of my right and my right foot in front of my left. And that's all I'm worried about. And that's all I'm going to make it through. You know, it gets that granular. And
got to look inside yourself a lot at that point, I would imagine. And
yeah, but when you're looking down, it's not as overwhelming a decision as,
sure,
you know, Hell Week's 6 weeks into training. And so you still have, you know, 4+ months to make it to graduation. And if you're looking at that, it's going to completely overwhelm you.
Yeah.
But if you focus like, hey, this is the direction, that's the direction I'm going, and I just need to move one foot in front of the other, then that's good to go.
Awesome. So after that, you had another 20 years in the Navy, 20 plus years. How many years total did you have in the Navy?
30.
30? Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's awesome. So thank you for all of that. And you deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan, or
Yep, both places, Iraq and Afghanistan.
What would you say if you had to like capture a few lessons that you had learned out of that? What are your top 3 things that you could think of out of that experience that you could put together? Is there anything any way you can simplify
experience?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Humility. You got to be humble. The second, and here's what's great about the battlefield is Darwinism is happening really fast. The second that you think you know everything that's going on is when you will die, or get severely wounded. And so there's that picture up. That was my troop in Afghanistan. That picture behind me. For a while, we were just crushing the Taliban every time we engaged them. And I started as a leader. I started to get arrogant and I started to get complacent and I lost my sense of humility. And then there was one operation when we got caught with our pants down, almost literally. I mean, we decided it was getting hot out and we decided to take off our helmet and body armor. We didn't think the Taliban was going to come out and fight that day. And then they did, and they brought it. And we're real lucky we didn't get overrun. And there was a point in there where I was laying flat on my belly on top of my body armor and helmet that I'd been lazy and took off. And I was looking up at this rock wall over my head that we built our fighting position. And it's 10 inches above my head. And I'm watching it physically erode under the impact of bullets. And I'm like, well, I am going to get shot today. And I don't know how when I do get shot, I don't know how it isn't more than once. And I'm probably going to die here.
Yep.
Check. And then let me get my body armor back on, get my helmet back on my head and keep fighting. So humility is huge. There's a Stoic saying, and it's like, you can't learn things about things you already know. And so if you assume you already know things, and you just quit growing as a person. And I think we can all agree that it's impossible to know everything.
Trying to think of bringing in the Stoic philosophy and things like that. Were you a student of that kind of stuff while you were in the Navy, or was that more later in your career?
Yeah, all that stuff came later. Yeah. The book that really opened my potential for personal growth was Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
Everything else up until that, I was just reactive. I was just doing stuff and getting by. But Extreme Ownership came up right when I promoted out of the tactical levels of leadership into the executive levels of leadership.
Sure.
And it really opened my eyes to thinking about leadership, thinking about.
And you knew Jocko before. I mean, you knew Jocko and Leif before the book came out, right?
Yeah, that's why I read it.
Yeah, exactly. But
I wouldn't have read it if I didn't know them. I met Jocko in 1993, and I was at SEAL Team 3 with them in that 2005-2006 deployment. I was just over in a different task unit. I wasn't in task unit Bruiser.
Yeah.
But and I'll tell you, self-improvement books or self-help books are something that I didn't read up
Yeah.
until then. Up until then, the only things that I really read would be like some history and mostly science fiction and fantasy.
Jason, we have more in common than you think, because until my second wife and I used to laugh at my second wife because when we got together and got married, all of the books on her shelf were self-help books, and all the books on my shelf were exactly what you just mentioned: history and science fiction and fantasy. So, but now it's flipped around, and I think, you know, Extreme Ownership was one of those books for me too. I had somebody recommend his podcast, and then I went back and started unraveling everything. But my first marriage was a lot of me passing the buck on blame and things like that, and not taking responsibility for what I was doing. And I am just lucky that my second wife stuck around long enough for me to transform some of those things. So I don't know if you have a similar feeling to that.
Yeah, 100% agree. You know, I listen to. I don't have time to sit down and read. I just don't. Until winter time, when the days are shorter, I'm out doing things. And so I listen to Audible. I used to have a long commute because we lived in East County, San Diego, where we had a farm, and then I had to do an hour and 10-minute commute into work. And so I would just devour, or started podcasts. And so the long form podcasts were easy for me to listen to. You know, it was nothing to finish Jocko's podcast in 3 days or 2 days. And then I'd listen to Extreme Ownership on Audible. And then I remember I remember this like it was yesterday. And Iris was out running the rototiller in the yard, tilling up a spot. And I just got home from work, and she goes, "Hey, did you know that Jocko's got a podcast?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "It's really good." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And she goes, "Do you even know what podcasts are?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Give me your phone."
Yeah.
So she takes my phone and downloads the podcast app's already on it with iPhones. And then she just gets me a subscription to Jocko podcast. I started listening then and there. And then it's just been, podcasts are great in general. And so I've been on this path since then, since somewhere, you know, it's like 2000. Gosh, when was it?
Because you were still, I mean, you were probably active duty. Jocko had been out for a couple of years. So
yeah, Jocko had been out for 5 years, and I was the ops master chief at
so you're just a little busy. Just a little busy
to promote into the command master chief of SEAL Team 5 slot.
Yeah, awesome. So you're just a little busy, didn't really have time to probably keep up with Jocko and what he was doing a whole lot at the time, or
Jocko just isn't that way.
Yeah,
he's never calling you unless there's something going on. You have to call him to interact with him. Yeah. So I would see Jocko, because we were family friends. I saw him at least twice a year.
Sure.
And maybe even actually a little more than that.
Yeah.
Because on my place in East County, San Diego, I had a range. So I had a 200-yard range and a pistol range.
Gotcha.
And so they could just, instead of having to go to a private range, they'd come out to my place and shoot.
Yeah, that sounds like heaven.
Pretty happy with it, yeah.
Especially in California, to be able to have your own private range. I mean, so.
Yeah, it was the area that we lived in was super cool because that's what everybody did. Everyone shot on their property, so it wasn't like folks got hysterical about it.
When you started looking at Extreme Ownership, how did that change the way you approached either your job, your marriage, your kids, yourself? I mean, that kind of thing. I mean, was that kind of a transformative
fundamentally thing? It forces you to stop casting blame and making excuses and going, okay, how can I be part of the solution here?
Yeah.
And so that is not an easy, because it means that you got to check your ego, but your life is so much better in so many ways. So it's one of those things where you can't, like, you don't get immediate gratification, but it's coming and it's huge. So that's it. You know, it's like, hey, well, if I'm having this issue or Iris and I are having a disagreement, maybe I need to step back and look at it from her end, or, you know, maybe I'm just communicating this incorrectly.
Sure. And with your kids, did it change things with them as well? Like how you deal with your kids?
Yeah, there were a lot of things that came across with that. One of the other things too is my struggles with PTSD, and I had a temper that was like a millisecond, and it would get set off, and
Sure.
so I started going to after my Afghanistan deployment, I started going to counseling with one of the military psychologists.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of
And
pictures that you posted about that, with your 1,000 yard stare going on
oh
kind of
yeah, I
thing.
was wrecked after that deployment.
Yeah.
Wrecked. And
So you
trying
said
to
you
remember,
started
I was not
counseling.
a good person. Yeah, so I started.
Yeah.
I was just like, hey, you're not the same person that left on this deployment.
Hmm.
Your temper, just you got to start sitting down with the psych. So I did, and then that's something I continue to do for a while. And one of the things that I really had to work on was controlling my temper, and then coming home and I drive home from a long day at work. The kids are running around the house. Maybe their toys are out and everything, and they're being loud, but they're just being kids. I shouldn't just
Yeah.
start yelling at everybody the second I get home from work. But that's what I was doing. So, when you're introspective about your parenting and you think about it from a level of extreme ownership, then you step away from that anger, because anger is a manifestation of weakness,
Yeah.
period. If
Yeah.
you're losing your temper, you're weak.
Yeah.
And it was quite a revelation to have that. And it was, Marcus Aurelius said that, and it's a big focus of Stoicism,
Hmm.
that you lose your temper, then you're not in control of your emotions. And it got to a point where it made sense to me. And then, but it's not easy. It's
Hmm.
not easy not to lose your temper. It's
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah. You can have the
Um,
emotion, but separating that emotion and you don't
yeah,
bury it, but you kind of try and detach yourself from it a little bit. Right.
yeah, and that gives
Yeah.
you space around it. And
Yeah.
once you get space around it, and once you can recognize, like, okay, hey, I'm getting angry about something.
Hmm.
Is there anything I can do about it?
Hmm.
No, there isn't. In most cases, there's not anything you can do about it. So then you got to go, well, is this worth me spiking my cortisol over?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Um, and what everybody's got to be careful of is the media and social media is constantly poking in you in the eye, trying to get a reaction out of you,
Hmm.
because
Because that's
that
what they do.
generates ratings.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
they're trying to make money. It generates ratings, and that's a model that works. Good for
Yep.
them. And you
Yep.
just need to raise above the model. There's a real good buddy of mine, and in the teams, and we did deployment together. And it was a deployment. I went to Somalia in 1995, and
Okay.
he said, they're not clever enough to make me unhappy. And
I
it's
love that quote.
genius.
Yeah, I love
And
that quote.
so, yeah. And so anytime I get something that's like, oh, this is pissing me off, or that person's pissing me off, or I'm getting angry, I hear his voice, Billy Helmer, saying they're not clever enough to make me unhappy. And
Yeah.
then it helps me step back from it.
Awesome.
Now, there are things like, hey, this doesn't mean I'm just a blob that
Yeah.
just, oh, I don't care, groovy, man. No, there are things that that may set you off. And then you're like, all right, that requires some action on my part. And maybe that
Yeah.
action is me voting. Maybe that action is walking across the street to stop something that's unacceptable that's going on, or whatever. That's fine. I
Yeah.
can do that. I'm just not going to be angry when I do it.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
I can detach, I can prioritize and execute, and see what I need to do and get things done.
Did you ever struggle? I noticed one of my things that with dealing with all of my stuff in my history is struggling with engagement with my kids, like really getting down with them and getting engaged with them on what they're doing. Is that something you ever struggled with?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because your ego, it's all about you. So then you'll find yourself talking at your kids all the time
Yeah.
instead of with them.
Yep.
And it's really difficult to slow down and be present in the moment. And
Hmm.
just, if you're going to do something with them, let them decide what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
all the time, but you have to carve some time out for you just to be present with them and build Legos or pick flowers or whatever it is that they want to do with you.
So you have how many kids at home still? A boy and a
I
girl, or
have
two
two.
girls? Or two?
No, I have so I have a 26-year-old son in the Army right now,
Okay.
and I've got and he's from a previous marriage, and then I've got Storm and Thor. Storm's 10 and Thor's 9.
Okay. Okay. Awesome.
Girl and a boy.
Yeah. And that's so what does your son do in the Army?
He's a tanker,
Tanker. Okay.
19
Awesome.
kilo. He's a
Okay.
gunner on a M1 Abrams tank right now.
That would
Yeah.
be fun to shoot one of those. But
It sure looks like a lot of
yeah.
fun, I can tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had mentioned my son is in basic right now. He's going to be a cryptologic linguist. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, yep. So he's going to be. We're going to go. Hopefully, he's going to be out at Monterey for a year once he gets done with basic. So we're going to go see him. We're actually going to be wintering in San Diego. We're in Rhode Island right now, but in 3 months we're going to be in San Diego. So so that'll be awesome. But
Yeah, Monterey is just a terrible place to be for a year.
yeah, I can
I
imagine.
don't know how he's going to make it.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Yeah.
What an awesome place.
Yeah, yep. Now that's going to be interesting. Is did your son know that he wanted to be in the military, but did he choose the Army to just not do the Navy because you set the bar high, or how did you decide on the Army?
His grandpa was in the Army.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
his grandpa on his
mom's side
was in the Army and in Vietnam, and so I think he just wanted to follow his footsteps. I didn't care what he did. And what I told to him is, it's like, get out in the world and do something, and that it doesn't matter to me whether you go in the military or go on a wildland fire crew and fight fires, or you go up to Alaska and work on a fishing boat. I just want you to get out in the world. And actually, I was concerned when he did join the military that he was doing it because he thought that's what I wanted him to do. And I told him a bunch of times, and I don't know if he heard it, but I'm like, hey, don't think that I want you to go in the military, because if you go in for because someone else wants you to, it's just not the right reasons. And it'll just wind up being a horrible experience. Luckily, it seems to be a really good experience. I don't know if he's going to make a career out of the Army, but it's been a great experience for him.
That's awesome. Yeah. We're obviously too early to tell on our side, but we'll see how it goes. So, I mean, so far it sounded pretty good from basic. He hasn't gotten a call every week, so I'm assuming that they're it's either at the the company level or whatever they've managed to screw up, because I've seen it. The nice part is that they have Facebook groups for all the training companies now, so you can get pictures and updates on what's going on and kind of keep track of them that way. So that part's been good.
But the problem with that is you're looking at 80 shaved heads trying to figure out which one is your son, and they all essentially, for the most part, look real similar. And you're like, I think that guy in the fourth row back there he's
exactly.
And I can't tell.
Yep. Yeah. So we haven't found a picture of him yet, but we'll see at some point. So, so when you decided it was time to be done with the Navy, I mean, you obviously could have done a couple more years if you wanted. What was kind of the deciding? No, you were done.
30 years is pretty much it. And
it is okay.
If I wanted to do more than 30, I would have had to get a waiver. And then it would have required that I worked at the flag level. So I would have had to go work for a general or
like at the SOCOM level
or an admiral.
Yeah.
A general or admiral somewhere. And that is like, my family had already been through, Iris had been through 4 deployments. The kids had been through 2. I was like, I'm not deploying anymore. I'm done.
Cool. So when did you, let's step back a little bit, I guess. I mean, with your relationship with Iris, I mean, and I'll let people find the other podcast where you kind of go through some of that, but you used to mention you had the farm in East County. Was that always your goal, was to kind of get back to nature a little bit more once you did retire?
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because you had mentioned before too, you wanted to be like a forester or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. This is where,
if you look at your Instagram page, you are going nuts with transforming your land that you're on and things like that, and that's awesome. But what kind of pushes you in that direction?
I don't know. It's just
Yeah,
something I'm drawn to. It's something I'm passionate about. I love the outdoors. And so, and then the wilderness, and it's just, I feel so good and so grounded when I'm out here. Why wouldn't I live here full time?
yeah, exactly. Did you? I don't know. How did you find that that was where you wanted to go? I guess because I think one of the things that we struggle with. I mean, we know that we were called to kind of to take this route to travel with our boys for a few years, but I think a lot of people struggle with finding their place in the world. I mean, maybe that's kind of a little metaphysical or a little I don't know, woke or something like that. But I think people struggle with that kind of crap. And did you always know that that's where you wanted to go, or is it just a matter of did you have to kind of figure it out?
No, I always knew that I wanted to go here because when I was a kid and we would go to get out of this wherever we were living and go camping, which we did
Yep.
quite frequently, I was
Okay.
like, oh, in the mountains with trees and in the forest, this is where I want to be.
Awesome.
This is where I want to be 100% of the time. Now, Iris grew up, in a super rural area. I mean, she was off the grid. I don't think she even had electricity
Yeah.
until she was like 12 years old.
Wow.
So she was able to like execute. If it was up to me, because I just didn't have the experience, I would probably live closer to town and be like on a 5 acre property surrounded by a ton of other 5 and 10 acre properties, not
Sure.
out where we're at right now. But this is where we're super happy here. This is where we need to be. It's perfect.
What's the nearest town, or what? How big is the nearest town, and how far away is it from
So
where
the
you are?
kids go to town that's in a place 10 minutes from where we live,
Okay.
and it's about 500 people.
Okay.
And then the nearest big town is 5,000.
Okay.
And that is a 45-minute drive from here. And that's where the Walmart is and all that
Hmm.
other stuff. If I want to go to Costco, it's a 2.5 hour drive. If I
Sure.
want to go to Home Depot, it's 2.5 hours. Um, there's smaller hardware stores closer and nurseries and things like that in the town that's
Sure.
about 5,000,
Sure.
so same
Yeah.
people, same population as an aircraft carrier.
Yep. Awesome. So from here, I mean, you're still working with Jocko with Echelon Front. What do you do for Echelon Front as part of your job there?
So at Echelon Front, what we do is we solve problems through leadership. And any problem that you're having in your life or at your business is a leadership problem, period. It is. So we help people apply leadership and extreme ownership to solve their problems with businesses. And so I travel to go do speaking engagements and leadership workshops with business. We also engage with businesses over an expanded period of time
Hmm.
and do that. And so that's what I do. And so the beauty of that is I can live anywhere I want.
Sure.
Now, of all the Echelon in front instructors, I live the furthest from an airport.
Sure.
And traveling is kind of a challenge, but when we laid out the pros and cons for living where we do, it was like that 2.5 hour drive to the airport wasn't that big a deal.
Hmm.
And then I was going to go into contracting because it's lucrative.
Hmm.
And
You're
and
talking
so I was
military
going to
security contracting stuff like that. You know.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
And I was going to do that when I retired because it would give us the freedom to live wherever we wanted.
Hmm.
But I was going to have to do 2 months on, 2 months off.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a ridiculous amount of deploying.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not really getting home. And so now I have the freedom where I travel. I'm probably on the road a week out of every month
Okay.
in 2 or 3 day chunks.
Hmm.
So that's
Hmm.
easy. Yeah.
How does it feel when you see the light kind of come on at the companies you go to? Is there usually a point where the lessons you're trying to teach sinks in for somebody?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's incredibly inspirational. So a lot of people it shakes the tree enough
Mm-hmm.
that you get a good percentage of folks that are like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And then they're get on the same, we call it the path. They get
Yep.
on the path,
Yep.
just making themselves better, instead of waiting for someone else to do it for them, whether that's your favorite politician or whatever. They're like, no, I'm going to get this solved myself. And they start doing better. And so that's
Yeah.
immensely rewarding.
And I think the thing for me after going through extreme ownership it was, how else can I apply this to my life? You know, where else can is it just it's not just my business. It's not just my relationship with my wife. It's everything that I do and myself. And I still suck at it sometimes. I still screw up, but what else can I do to take this into different areas of my life?
You cannot find an aspect of your life that it doesn't apply to.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So what is the rest of your year look like? Do you got some musters coming up? So the musters are Echelon's big in-person gatherings. I'm assuming you speak at those as well.
I do.
Yeah,
I speak for like 30 minutes on the second day, just talking about the importance of training.
yeah,
And yeah, we got one coming up in October in
okay,
Nevada. So we've got one
okay,
coming up, and then we're getting our 2022 schedule done. I've got several engagements throughout the end of the year going into. We usually get pretty busy in October and November,
yeah,
and then early December as well.
okay. If you don't mind, I'd like to step back to your kids just a little bit. You mentioned you got a son that's 9, a daughter that's 8. You
10.
wrote, or 10, so 10, I'm sorry.
Yep.
You wrote a poem for your daughter a while ago that kind of showcased what you wanted her to be. And I forgot to get a copy of it, but it was
I have it pulled up on my phone. I'll read it to you here in a second.
Awesome. Yep, that would be awesome.
Fundamentally, I felt like no one else had put out really good guidance on how to parent a daughter, especially how to be a good father to a daughter. And there was a lot of stuff out there that I just didn't care for. Like the concept of like, oh, when she turns 16 and she starts dating and guys come over, I'm going to be cleaning a rifle in the living room or something like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
that didn't make any sense to me. In fact, it was kind of weird. And so I really struggled with, well, what does it mean to me to be, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want for my daughter in the world? And how do I want to parent her? So it was something that I spent about 10 months being very deliberate in what I thought about it. And I took a lot, honestly, from Jocko. I took a lot from Jordan Peterson, that inspired me in what I came up with. And so I came up with kind of like bulletized thoughts on how I wanted to parent and how I wanted to be for my daughter. So here it is. To my daughter, I will love you unconditionally, always, no matter what. Why is that the first line in the deal? Well, if my daughter gets purple hair, I'm not going to love her any less.
Yep.
If my daughter has aspects about her sexuality, I'm not going to love her any less. If my daughter comes home at 16 and she's pregnant, I am not going to love her any less. And I remember as a kid seeing girls get pregnant in high school and her parents kicked her out of the house. And I was thinking, wow, not cool. Not cool. And so that's why that's bullet line number 1. It's front and center. But here's another thing. I will not pamper you. This will forge a resilience that will help you conquer all of life's obstacles. I do not intend to raise a princess, but rather a warrior with fire in her heart and ice in her veins. And so there's another aspect of being a man where you want to just make your daughter a princess and pamper her and all that stuff. And you're just not setting her up for life in the real world.
Yeah.
You need
Yeah.
to make a daughter that is able to overcome all the obstacles that life is going to throw at her, because you're not going to be eventually, odds are you're going to die before she does. And
Mm-hmm.
so it is incumbent upon you as a dad to make sure that she is ready to just overcome all life's obstacles. And that means you just don't do everything for her.
Well, and it's also, you want to set the example of how you're going to treat her, because how you treat her is going to be the type of guys that she's going to look to have a relationship with. And if she's got some guy that just wants to pamper her and lock her in a box, or shelter her from everything, do you really want her getting in a relationship with a guy like that in the long run?
No, because
Yeah.
that's not a relationship, it's a trap.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so the next bullet is, and I get to that later.
Okay.
So in my mind, there's nothing you can't do, no job or goal beyond your reach. And by that, I mean, I'm serious.
Mm-hmm.
Any job that's out there, and it doesn't matter if it's a Navy SEAL or it's a firefighter, those jobs have one set of standards.
Mm-hmm.
And if she's capable of making that set of standards, she should be able to do any one of those things. And if we call ourselves a free society,
Yep.
anyone's gender cannot hold them back from any job.
Yep.
Period. And that, that just comes from just thinking hard about that as, well, what does freedom actually mean to me? And if we say we live in a free society, then we don't say, hey, girls can't do this job. Girls can't be in combat. It's
Mm-hmm.
not. Now,
But we
we
don't
need
compromise our principles on the other side, though, either.
absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
That's absolutely part of the discussion there, is that
Yeah.
there is one standard, and whatever the job is, there's one standard. And
Mm-hmm.
when we have separate standards based on your gender,
Mm-hmm.
not cool.
Yeah.
That's not cool. And I think that's something that we will work through as a society as we develop. So I will challenge you so that you can stand confidently on your own 2 feet, independent and strong. That overlays the rest of it. And then I will set the example on how to treat those that you love. So when you choose a partner, it will be someone who lifts you up.
Yep.
And so that's it, because my example is going to be a huge influence on who she chooses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was really careful that I did not select a gender when I said who you choose,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know what her preference is going to be.
Yeah.
Period. And as her dad, loving her unconditionally, I don't want her to have some voice in the back of her head thinking that she's falling short because she isn't straight.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's not something I can project on her. That's something that's just who she, is. So, and then I will invest my time and energy in you so that when I am gone, enough memories of me will be with you in your heart to keep forever. Stand tall with your shoulders back. This world is yours for the taking.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
awesome.
that's my philosophy fundamentally on raising strong young women.
Mm-hmm. How did you turn that around for your son?
So I'm working on that.
Can't wait to see it. So
in the next month, I'll put it
okay.
out.
Awesome.
But it's fundamentally different from my daughter, because society as a whole, we're pushing them in the direction that this world is yours for the taking.
Yeah.
What I am going to articulate, obviously, number one, I will love the first bullet is going to be the same. I'll love you unconditionally, always, no matter what.
Yep.
And then there is going to be a discussion in there about allowing your emotions, which is something that I don't think we have a healthy understanding in our society about allowing the emotions and sadness.
Yep.
And men can cry, and it's okay to cry. Now, when you Now, if you say I can't do something because I'm crying or that holds you back, then that becomes a
Yeah.
problem. But it isn't a problem when you when you experience those emotions and let them go, because if you just pent them up, they manifest themselves later in anger, and that's just not healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a lot of that with my oldest son because of the divorce and things like that. He bottled up a lot of that stuff, and then it exploded when he was in high school, and we had a lot of issues to deal with at that point. But thankfully, he's good now.
Sure.
But yeah, yep, yeah,
Yeah, every life isn't easy. Everyone and it's just like everyone has their own obstacles to go over. We don't know what anyone's struggles are based on just looking at them.
yep, yep,
So and so that's, I think that the healthiest way is to, when something makes you sad, allow it and then
yeah.
try to move on. Um,
Yeah, I think it's a good thing we're getting away from, boys just have to be tough and not cry and crap like that, because uh, I see it with my sons. I've got an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, and then an almost 2-year-old. And, the 8-year-old is definitely going through, he's a complete extrovert. And this traveling thing where we're in a new location every couple of weeks, he has a real hard time with that because he makes friends instantly. And
mhm.
leaving those friends and making new friends kills him every time we do it, but he's starting to
Yeah,
get used to it. But that's been the toughest part for him, I think, with traveling around the country. So
sure. What a great experience, though. They're getting to see the
yeah,
whole country.
yeah, and we're getting to see family that we haven't seen. I mean, my uncle that lives out here in Rhode Island, I see him maybe once a year for a day, and
Mhm.
and now we're spending 3 weeks in the Rhode Island area. So we'll get to spend lots of time with them, and he's 81. He's not getting any younger. So for
Yeah,
sure.
and you're there at a fantastic time of year. I think in like 2 weeks, the striper should start running. The
Yep.
bluefish should be there now.
Oh,
It's
okay. We're gonna go
it's
dig some clams and stuff like that.
oh
And
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome.
yeah. And he is all about going out in the water and digging crap up and things like that. So, what are some of the lessons? Let's switch to boys for a little bit. With your son, what are some of the things that you try to teach him on a day-to-day basis? I mean, I've seen you teaching him forestry and shooting and farming and things like that. But do you have a plan for that, or are you kind of making it up, or whatever job you need to get done that day?
So that he just tags along a lot of times with whatever we got to get done.
Okay.
Both the kids do, and there's not a difference based on their gender on what I teach them, but their
Okay.
interests are different.
Sure.
Uh, they just completed their hunter safety. My son's really interested in hunting. My daughter could take it or leave it. I'm like, well,
Yep.
I want you to have this skill, but you don't have to do it. And she comes along with me when I'm hunting, and she's really, really good out in the field.
Probably
She
better
just
than your
doesn't want
son.
to be one. Huh?
Better
Well,
than
my
your son.
son, yes, because my
Yeah.
son is less focused. He's
Yep.
looking around. He's talking loud. He gets bored really fast.
Yep.
Storm is just dialed in
Yeah.
like a laser, and but she's not super interested at this point in pulling the trigger and
Okay.
actually harvesting an animal, which is good. But I wanted to have those skills. So it just depends on what I'm doing, because
Hmm.
to live, this far out, you kind of have to be good at everything.
Yep.
So you have to have a little bit of electrician, a little bit of plumber, a little bit of contract, general contractor, period. So I try to have them along and show them what I'm doing as I'm doing it,
Hmm.
and just spending time together.
That's awesome.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Says, yeah. And then we had that with my 8-year-old. He started coming out deer hunting with me, sitting in my tree stand when he was 6, because Wisconsin will let you do that. And he actually could have shot something at 6, but he got about 15 minutes into our tree stand and it's like, all right, I'm bored. Let's go.
yeah, yeah,
I haven't
yeah,
seen anything yet. Well, I just shot a deer an hour ago, so nothing's coming back, but he wanted to go out and sit anyway. So I kind of
yeah.
knew what was going to happen. But do you do a lot of deer hunting and stuff like that out there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Hunting is a huge aspect of our lives. We hunt deer. I
Do you have elk
They're
out there?
elk. Yes, we do. But
Awesome.
I haven't got the elk patterns figured out and don't have access to the land. So it's something that I'm going to do when I get
Okay.
more into archery, and I'm going to hunt them during archery tries. Right now I'm traveling to Wyoming to elk hunt.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Did I see that Iris just posted a video or pictures of some animals she's going to be carrying more often, I'm guessing, when she's out? She had a bear,
Oh yeah,
a
did you
brown
see
bear
that?
and a
That was
black
awesome.
bear. Yeah.
Yeah, well, two.
Or
So
was it two brown?
we've two black bears. Both of them were black. One of them just had a lighter coat and looked
Oh,
brown, but
okay.
it's still a black
Gotcha.
bear. And then a cougar.
Yeah.
All of which will eat you.
Yeah.
So usually we carry bear spray or a handgun. I mean, both have concealed carry, so
Yep.
most of the time we got it on, but then it's just like a reinforcement of that
Hmm.
decision.
Yeah. Are you going to start rifle carrying out there on a
No,
regular basis or not?
no,
No.
because most of the time they just run away from you
Sure.
anyways.
Okay.
And so it hasn't happened in this state. Usually the cougars like to eat mountain bikers for some reason. I don't know why that is, but the last two deaths here in the States have been mountain bikers. And so whenever we go out in the forest, we have our dogs with us. Typically, they're going to smell the cougar. And
Hmm.
typically, because there's dogs
Yeah.
in more than one, they'll leave you alone. But it's
Hmm.
just a smart idea to have why wouldn't you? You know, it's like 16
Hmm.
ounces, or it's not that much extra weight, and
Sure.
we just carry.
Sure. Absolutely. Yep. If there was one place other than where you're at right now that you could live in the U.S., where would it be?
Shoot.
Go up to
Probably
Alaska?
down to no, no.
Is that too far?
The weather's too extreme in Alaska. I'll go visit it when it's nice, but
Sure.
the long days are really trying, and then the short days, I'm sure, are not a lot of fun either.
Hmm.
So probably the Bitterroot Valley over in Montana, just south of Missoula there.
Okay.
That was an area that we really had our eye on before deciding to come up here.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, so did everybody else, and now the real estate prices are just through the roof there. But
Yeah.
it looks like a pretty ideal area.
Awesome. Awesome. Since let's kind of pivot a little bit. It's September 9th today, and 2 days is going to be the anniversary of 9/11. I'm sure for you, I think I had heard on Jack's podcast, you had just re-enlisted. You had separated from the Navy because of family issues. You had just come back into the Navy a month before.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine that you've got some emotions and thoughts going on with that. Is that something you can talk about for a little bit?
You know, I processed it, and it's what happens.
Yeah.
There's violence in the world, and when you have fundamentally different ideologies and ways of life, and one is outpacing the other one, there is going to be violence.
Hmm.
And so the attacks on 9/11 were a manifestation of that violence as uh, Western ideology, because it offers more freedom and inclusiveness,
Yeah.
pushes other more extreme ideologies off the planet.
Yep. Yep. Did you?
Obviously, a horrible day,
Yeah. Yep.
um, but then something like that was going to happen at some point, and it may have been much worse if it wasn't 9/11 and the two planes. What else could have been?
Yeah.
But there was an inevitable class. It forced us to deal with an issue um, that we're going to be dealing with for a long time, probably longer than you and I will be alive. But
Yep.
that's fine.
Yeah. Do you
You know
think
how we're
we're?
going to fix it?
What's that?
You know how we're going to fix it?
Give me a guess. Extreme ownership.
No, well, that too, but
That and people like you going
raising
in.
strong, empowered women.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. It is interesting to see. I mean, I think everybody. I don't know what everyone was expecting with our exit out of Afghanistan, but I think you can't. The tiger didn't get new colored stripes in the 20 years since the Taliban got kicked out. So I think what we're seeing happen since we left is exactly what we should have expected to happen, and it's only going to get worse there again. So, but
I disagree with you.
you think so? Or you just
I don't think so. Here's the deal.
okay?
Halfway through my deployment to Afghanistan, it occurred to me that we cannot defeat the Taliban because most of the people there are the Taliban. It's their
Sure.
culture. And
Okay.
so as soon as we leave, unless we're going to kill them all, and then what's that? That's genocide. That's not cool either.
Yep.
So as soon as we left, which we had to, because it just isn't worth the blood and treasure we were spilling to prop that place up.
Sure.
Obviously, we need to monitor it forever to make sure that there are no more attacks off of their soil, but we have the ability to do that. And then we can deal directly with any threats via, bombs or surrogate forces, all these things, we have them.
Yeah.
Now, we were in Afghanistan for 20 years. And in that time, there's a whole generation of women that got educations because we were there. Prior to that, women were not allowed to even read.
Okay, I'll definitely give you that.
And now there's a whole generation of women that can read. You're never going to get that genie back in the bottle. Even if you don't, even if they said women can't go to school, those moms are going to teach their daughters how to read, and they're going to educate them. And so they're never getting that genie back in the bottle. They have to moderate some.
Okay.
And right now, what's going on in Kabul? There are protests. You can shut the protests down with brute force, and it doesn't work on the long scale. It doesn't.
Yep.
Freedom will, if you look at the timeline for longer than just now, it will be better than it was. We are not going back to the Taliban pre 9/11 state in Afghanistan.
Okay.
It's not as good as we'd like it, but it's
yeah.
I don't think it's worth getting all angry about. Sure. Are there generals that might need to be fired because it happened so fast? Maybe. But that we should always be willing to take a hard look at who's doing a job for us and judge whether or not they did a good job and they made good decisions or not. But that's my view, is that we did a huge amount of good by getting a whole generation of women educated in that time frame, and it's going to be okay.
Okay. Well, I definitely respect your opinion, and I'll definitely spend some time thinking about it for sure. So, do you know where you want to take your business within Echelon Front, within your career from this point forward? Do you know what your weaknesses are right now that you need to do better at, that kind of thing?
I can see a trajectory that I want to go, and in a 10-year horizon line, I don't want to travel anymore to go talk to businesses. I just want to be traveling if Iris and I decide to travel somewhere.
Yeah.
I want to continue to be involved in social media forever, because I just think that it's been a positive thing. Like on my Instagram, I've seen all kinds of great inspirational people, and then the potential I have to inspire other people is great too, and I don't want to stop doing that.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm 62 in 10 years. I think I'll be traveling a lot less, and that and you know what that might mean I'm just engaging with people via Zoom, which we do a fair amount of that in Echelon Front now.
Yeah.
But
well, you had to pivot last year anyway, right? And
we did. Yeah.
So I think connectivity options, connectivity options are only going to get better over time, and that's going to make life easier and that kind of thing. So, well, I think maybe we can wrap it up here then for now. And
sure.
I really appreciate your time. Like I said, Jason, you've been a real inspiration to me, and I'm thankful that you were able to make the time available to be on the podcast. And I will hopefully get it out soon, within the next week or so here. But just know that what you've been posting online has been an inspiration to me, and is helping me to walk that path a little bit better. There's definitely things I need to do better and can do better. I think you're only human if you can say that. So, is there any parting messages that you can pass on at all?
Yeah, I have a lot of friends, and I see a lot of folks that are frustrated, and they're upset, and they're angry about Afghanistan or any of the stuff going on in our country right now. And I would implore you to, instead of paying attention to what's the national media is saying, just look around and see what you see in your own community.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that and focus on that. Focus on helping your neighbors. Notice it when your neighbors come over to help you out.
Mm-hmm.
And also notice that their politics may not be the same as you, but
Mm-hmm.
we're all in this together as Americans and as people. So just, instead of looking at things that are on the national level, just look around your own communities,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh,
see
go
all
ahead.
the good that's there.
And a little
That's
bit
it.
of that Jordan Peterson, clean your room before you fix the world kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean that's another great thing too, is look at your own house and see where you need to improve. And I think that's a fundamental thing that is there everywhere. But again,
Yeah.
look at what's going on. I bet you in anybody's community, there is a lot of good going on right now. And
Yep.
so don't let these huge issues get you down.
Yep. Sounds great. Jason, thank you for your 30 years of service to the country. Thank you for the messages that you put out there every day. And hopefully we can reach some people with us and get them to start improving their own lives. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony.
Yep.